I never believed in the kind of love that changes everything. Not really. And then, there was Ethan. It happened on a late August afternoon, that strange in-between time when summer's still clinging to the air, but autumn is already whispering from the trees. I wasn't looking for anything. Honestly, I wasn't looking for anyone. The coffee shop was small, tucked between a bookstore and a dry cleaner. I'd been there 100 times, always in my own world, same corner table, same cup of dark roast, same habit of pretending to read more than I actually did. But that day, he was there. He had that kind of presence that fills a room without trying. A navy sweater, messy brown hair, a half-smile that seemed both confident and uncertain. When our eyes met, it wasn't one of those lightning bolt moments people talk about. It was quieter, like recognition. Like my heart saying, "Oh, there you are." He noticed the book in my hand. "The Great Gatsby," he said, leaning slightly forward. "You sure you're ready for that kind of heartbreak?" I smirked. "Maybe I like a good heartbreak." That made him laugh, low and warm. And somehow, that sound stayed with me for days. We started meeting without meaning to. Morning coffees turned into long walks turned into midnight drives. There was something about him, something safe and wild at the same time. He didn't try to fix me. He just saw me. He'd ask about the smallest things, what song I played on repeat when I was sad, why I always wore silver rings instead of gold, what I dreamed about when I couldn't sleep. No one had ever cared like that before. One evening, we sat on his apartment rooftop, watching the city glow beneath a fading sunset. The air was still, golden. He turned to me, his voice barely above a whisper. "You ever think," he said, "that the right person doesn't fix what's broken, they just make you stop wanting to hide it?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because in that moment, I realized I didn't want to hide anymore. We weren't perfect, not even close. But with him, everything ordinary felt cinematic. Grocery store trips turned into laughter-filled adventures. Rainy days became symphonies against the window. Even silence between us felt like music. People said I started to glow after I met him. Maybe I did. Love does that, it fills the cracks so beautifully that you forget they were ever there. There were nights I'd watch him sleep, his chest rising and falling beside me, and I'd think, this is it. This is what it means to be alive. If only I'd known how fleeting that feeling would be, how quickly the glow would fade, and how much it would hurt to lose it. But in that first season of us, in the laughter, the touches, the endless hours that never felt wasted, I believed in forever. And for a while, forever believed in us, too. The first time Ethan asked if I was okay, I laughed. It was a soft, nervous laugh, the kind that hides the truth. Because the truth was, something inside me had started to dim. It began quietly, like a fading light. I'd wake up exhausted no matter how long I slept. Colors looked duller, music sounded hollow. My own reflection felt like someone I barely knew. But I didn't want to worry him, not Ethan, not the man who made everything feel bright. "You sure you're not coming down with something?" he asked one morning, brushing his thumb across my cheek. His touch was warm, grounding. But my skin felt cold beneath it. "I'm fine," I lied. "Just tired." He believed me, or maybe he wanted to. Weeks passed, and my body started betraying me. My hands trembled when I poured coffee. My smile didn't quite reach my eyes. The world was still spinning, but I couldn't keep up with it anymore. One night, we were out for dinner, candlelight, soft jazz, everything that used to make me feel alive. And then suddenly, I couldn't breathe. My vision blurred, my chest tightened, and before I could speak, everything went dark. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed. The sterile smell of antiseptic burned my nose. Machines hummed around me. Ethan sat in a chair beside me, his head in his hands. When he looked up, his eyes were red. "You scared the hell out of me," he whispered. I tried to smile, but my lips shook. "I'm sorry. The doctors said it was autoimmune, that my body had started attacking itself. They didn't know why. They had names for it, treatments, tests, but no real answers." Ethan stayed through it all. He brought flowers, movies, soup I could barely taste. He read to me at night when I couldn't sleep. I remember one night, He sat by the window, whispering to himself, "I'll fix this. I'll find a way." But love doesn't fix what's unfixable. As the days blurred into weeks, I began to feel like a ghost in my own skin. My hair fell out in strands. My laughter turned quiet. Sometimes I'd catch Ethan watching me, really watching, with that look people have when they're trying to memorize something before it's gone. He started carrying my weight, cooking, cleaning, driving me to every appointment. I could feel the exhaustion building in him, the helplessness. But he never complained. Until one night. I woke to find him standing in the kitchen, his back to me, his hands shaking as he gripped the counter. "Ethan." He turned, eyes wet, jaw trembling. "You keep saying you're fine," he said, voice breaking. "But you're disappearing right in front of me. And I don't know how to stop it." I didn't know what to say. Because he was right. I was disappearing, not just physically, but emotionally. Like the part of me that used to glow was slipping into the dark, one heartbeat at a time. He came to me then, pulled me into his arms, and I felt his tears hit my neck. We stood there in silence, two people clinging to something that was already fading. And in that moment, I realized something I didn't want to face. Sometimes love isn't enough to keep you from breaking. But Ethan didn't give up. Not yet. He looked at me like I was still the girl from that rooftop, the one with laughter in her eyes and sunlight in her hair. He still saw her. Even when I couldn't anymore. Grief doesn't always come after someone's gone. Sometimes, it seeps in quietly while they're still beside you, breathing, smiling, pretending everything's fine. That's what happened to Ethan. He didn't leave. Not physically. But something in him started to unravel. At first, it was subtle. He stopped making jokes. The music in the apartment faded to silence. The TV stayed off. He'd just sit there, staring at the wall as if waiting for something to move. I'd talk about the weather, the hospital, anything to fill the space, but his answers got shorter, quieter. One night, I asked him, "What's wrong?" He looked at me for a long time, his eyes tired and red. "You're getting sicker," he whispered. "And I can't do anything. I can't fix it. I can't even make you laugh anymore." I reached for his hand, but he pulled away. Not because he didn't love me, but because love was starting to feel like a wound he couldn't close. After that, silence became our language. He still took care of me, meds on time, doctor visits, meals I couldn't finish. But he moved like a shadow of himself. Gone was the man who'd dance with me in the kitchen or sing terribly off-key in the car. In his place was someone haunted, someone who'd lost faith in the universe but refused to stop fighting it. I heard him at night sometimes, in the living room, whispering to no one. Pleading. Bargaining. Take anything. Just not her. I'd pretend I didn't hear. Because if I did, I'd have to admit that he was falling apart right alongside me. One morning, I found him outside on the porch, staring at the sunrise. His coffee had gone cold. His hands were trembling. I sat beside him, wrapped in a blanket. "You don't have to do this alone," I said softly. He didn't look at me. "I already am," he murmured. The words hit me harder than any diagnosis. I realized then, he wasn't just losing me. He was losing himself. Piece by piece, moment by moment. And it was my illness, my fading, that was taking him apart. He began to skip work. Missed calls from friends piled up. The apartment grew darker, quieter. He'd stay up through the night, researching treatments, diets, miracle cures, anything that might save me. And yet, he never stopped showing up. Every morning, I'd wake up to find him watching me sleep, his face hollow but soft, like he was memorizing the way I breathed. When he kissed me, there was something desperate in it, a need to hold on to the only part of his life that still felt real. I wanted to tell him to stop. To let me go. To live. But every time I opened my mouth, the words caught in my throat. Because I was selfish, I didn't want to lose him either. Even if keeping him meant watching him fade beside me. Then one night, as I drifted in and out of a fever dream, I heard him whisper against my skin, "If I lose you, I'll lose everything I am." And I knew he meant it. His silence was no longer empty, it was full of love, of fear, of everything he couldn't say out loud. And I realized that sometimes love doesn't die in the noise of goodbye. It dies quietly in the stillness between two heartbeats. There's a certain kind of silence that follows too much pain, not the peaceful kind, but the kind that hums with something waiting to break. That was our home now. Every room held its breath. Every clock ticked too loudly. Then one morning, Ethan was gone. His side of the bed was cold, his phone left behind. I called him, texted him, nothing. For hours, I sat by the window, watching the sky change color. He didn't come home until evening. When he walked in, his face was different, pale, drawn tight, eyes hollow. "Where were you?" I asked. He dropped a stack of papers onto the table, medical files, test results, things I hadn't seen before. "I went to talk to your doctor," he said quietly. I froze. "Ethan, you can't." "I had to," he interrupted, voice trembling. "You weren't telling me everything." He was right. I hadn't. The truth was, months ago, they'd offered an experimental treatment. Risky, uncertain, but it had a chance. I refused it. Not because I'd given up, but because the side effects could have destroyed whatever time I had left. I wanted my last days, if they were my last, to feel like life, not survival. He stared at me like I'd betrayed him. "You decided to die, and you didn't even tell me." His words cut deeper than anything my illness ever had. I tried to explain that it wasn't about giving up, that I just wanted him to remember me, not as a patient hooked to machines. But he wasn't hearing me. "I could have found another way," he said, his voice cracking. "I could have helped you. Don't you get it? You're everything I have left." Tears blurred my vision. "And that's exactly why I couldn't let you watch me disappear." He turned away, fists clenched, chest heaving. I watched him fight between love and anger, two sides of the same breaking heart. 4 days, he barely spoke. He'd leave early, come back late, eyes red from sleepless nights. I knew he was searching, calling specialists, researching hidden clinics, chasing hope in places that didn't exist. Then one night, he came home different again, a spark of something wild in his eyes. "I found someone," he said. "A researcher. They think your condition might be linked to a drug you were prescribed years ago." I blinked. "What? That's impossible." "No," he cut me off. "It's not. They've seen it before. It's rare, but it's man-made. Someone did this." My stomach turned cold. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Could it be true? That what was killing me wasn't fate, but a mistake? Ethan's hands were shaking as he held the papers out to me. "I'm not letting them take you from me," he whispered. "Not like this." I'd never seen that look in his eyes before, fury and love, tangled into something dangerous. Over the next week, he chased every lead. Phone calls, meetings, late-night drives to places he wouldn't tell me about. He stopped sleeping, stopped eating. He was no longer the man I fell in love with, he was a soldier in a war no one else could see. Then one night, he came home with blood on his sleeve. "Just a scrape," he said. But I knew better. "What did you do?" I whispered. He looked at me, tired, unsteady, desperate. "What I had to." And in that moment, I realized something inside him had snapped. Not from hate. From love. Love had taken everything from him, his peace, his laughter, his light. And now, it was taking the rest. I didn't know what truth he had uncovered, or what he had done with it. All I knew was that the man who once held me so gently now carried a kind of fire that could burn the whole world just to save me. There's a look people get when they've crossed a line they can't uncross, something quiet, almost holy in its ruin. That's how Ethan looked now. He'd stopped being the man who once sang to me in the car and left notes on my mirror. He moved differently, slower, heavier. His voice carried a new kind of stillness, like every word cost him something. He'd found the truth that the drug I'd been prescribed years ago had triggered my illness. A pharmaceutical company's minor side effect, buried in fine print, hidden behind signatures and silence. My life had been collateral damage. I should have felt vindicated. But all I felt was fear. Because Ethan wasn't the same anymore. He quit his job. He sold his car. He started showing up in places he shouldn't have been, outside corporate buildings, hospital archives, waiting rooms. I'd hear him on the phone at night, his voice low and dangerous. "They can't keep doing this," he'd whisper. "They have to answer for it." One night, he came home with a bruise blooming across his jaw. He tried to hide it, but I saw. "Ethan," I said softly, "what are you doing?" "Fighting," he said. "For you." But his eyes, they were tired, haunted. I reached for him, but he flinched. Not from me, from the weight of what he'd become. "I don't want this," I said. "Not if it costs you." He laughed, a broken, hollow sound. "It already has." And I knew then, love had remade him in its own image, fierce, reckless, and unstoppable. He was the man who used to find beauty in stillness. Now, he burned for justice. Every breath he took was a vow. He filed reports, contacted journalists, built a case against the people who'd stolen our peace. But there was something darker underneath, a fury that wouldn't rest until someone paid. Sometimes, I'd watch him while he slept, the lines on his face deeper, the softness gone. His hands twitched, like he was still fighting even in dreams. He was becoming someone forged from pain. And yet, even in that hardness, he still loved me like he always did, gently, completely, without question. He'd sit by my bed, reading aloud from my favorite books, even when his voice cracked from exhaustion. He'd kiss my forehead and whisper, "Almost there, baby. Just hold on a little longer." But I could see it, the cost. The fight was consuming him. One night, he stood by the window, looking out over the city lights, his reflection fractured in the glass. "I used to think love made people softer," he said quietly. "Now I know it turns them into soldiers." I didn't have the strength to argue. Because I saw it too. Love had turned him into someone both beautiful and terrifying. The next morning, he left early. He didn't tell me where he was going. Just kissed me once, slow, lingering, and said, "Whatever happens next, remember I did it because I couldn't live in a world where you were taken from me." I watched him walk away, his silhouette fading into the dawn. I didn't know it then, but that would be the last morning I'd ever see him as he was. Because by the time he came back, the man I fell in love with was gone. All that remained was the man he had become, a man built from grief, driven by love, and destined to pay the price for both. The morning he didn't come home, I knew something had changed. It wasn't intuition, it was absence. The kind that hums in the air, thick and certain. The police called 3 days later. There'd been an incident. That was the word they used, like it was small enough to fit inside a sentence. A confrontation outside a private facility. A gun. A single shot. Ethan hadn't fired it. He'd stepped in front of someone who had. They said he died instantly, as if that made it better. I remember sitting there, the world silent around me, his name echoing through the walls. My hands were steady, my heart wasn't. It was like every piece of sound in the world had folded inward. For a long time, I couldn't cry. I just sat there, clutching the last thing he'd given me, a notebook, full of messy handwriting and half-finished thoughts. The first page read, "If love hurts, then maybe that's how you know it's real." He'd found the truth before I did. The company, the drug, they were exposed after his death. His notes, his evidence, his endless sleepless nights, they had meant something. My name appeared in reports. Apologies. Settlements. But none of it mattered. Because the one person who'd fought for me was gone. They called him a hero. But he wasn't trying to be one. He was just trying to love me the only way he knew how, completely. After the funeral, I went back to our apartment. His scent still lingered on the pillow, faint but alive. I sat by the window, his favorite spot, and opened his notebook again. There were sketches of me, written words that looked more like prayers than sentences. On the last page, he'd written only one line. "If I have to lose myself to love you, then let me be lost." That's when I cried. Not for what was taken, but for what was given. For every late-night laugh, every whispered promise, every moment he'd looked at me like I was the whole universe. My body was still fragile, still uncertain. But something in me began to heal, not because I stopped hurting, but because his love had built something unbreakable inside me. Sometimes, at night, I still talk to him. Out loud. I tell him about the sky, about how the light hits the river at sunset, how I finally planted the garden he always wanted. And even though there's no answer, I swear sometimes, I feel him. In the warmth of the morning sun. In the stillness before it rains. In the quiet part of my heart that still beats for him. People ask if I've moved on. I smile and say, I've moved forward. But the truth is Ethan isn't gone. He lives in every part of me that still dares to love. Because love doesn't end. It transforms. It scars. It saves. And maybe that's the cruelest and most beautiful part of it all. That the same love that breaks you is the very thing that keeps you alive. Clapperboard final line. Some loves don't fade, they just learn to live in the silence.